If you're making TikToks, Instagram Reels, YouTube videos, or posting photos to Instagram, today I'm gonna show you a camera that can shoot it all almost flawlessly. For the past 6 months, I've been using this exact camera to create all my social media content. It's easily created over 150 videos for me this year alone and has taken thousands of dollars worth of images that I've delivered to clients. This camera is the Sony ZV-E1, and I believe that this is the best camera for content creators this year. And here's why. All right, so why this camera specifically? Well, I'm gonna just rattle off a handful of things that make this camera so unique and special, and that's gonna start painting a picture as to why this camera is almost perfection. We are first kicking things off with the full frame sensor inside of this camera. If you like the look of the out of focus, blurry background elements behind your subject, shooting with a full frame sensor is gonna be a game changer for you. It helps elevate and helps accentuate, if you will, those out of focus, blurry background elements. So shooting with a full frame sensor, for me nowadays, is an absolute non-negotiable. And you pair that up with the Sony ZV-E1's dual native ISO of 12,800, which pretty much means as you boost your ISO, usually things get noisier, and they do on the Sony ZV-E1, but when you get to 12,800, all the way up nearly to the end of the spectrum, all of a sudden, all the noise disappears, which is incredible. And even though the Sony ZV-E1 is only rocking 12 megapixels, the photo quality from this camera is more than enough for social media. And if you work with clients at all, it is more than enough to deliver to some clients, of course, depending on what they're doing with the photos. And last but not least, the feature that makes this camera so perfect for social media is the stabilization. The Sony ZV-E1 has something called dynamic active stabilization, and it is on another level. From my knowledge, the Sony ZV-E1 is one of, if not, I could be wrong here, but if not the only Sony camera that has dynamic active stabilization in it. And it is wild. All right, let's now dive into the video quality from the Sony ZV-E1, because I can tell you that after 6 months of shooting with this camera, I'm hooked. And if you've been following me for more than 6 months, you'll know that I was previously shooting with the R5C, a pretty high-end Canon camera, if you will. And I was a little bit nervous. Coming to such a small body, I thought that this camera was going to be the world of difference apart from the R5C, but boy, was I wrong. Now, while this camera is definitely no cinema camera, the 4K footage coming from this guy is incredible. The 10-bit color depth makes it an absolute dream to color grade, and I'll be honest, I've kind of fallen in love with S-Log3. I thought Canon C-Log3 had my heart forever, but S-Log3 is not that bad. Now, when I bought this camera, autofocus was nearly at the top of the list of priorities. And that's because for some reason, I just couldn't get the Canon R5C to focus correctly. I'd shoot videos like this with that Canon R5C, and from time to time, I'd have parts of me out of focus when more or less nothing is moving, and it drove me up the wall. But I am super stoked and relieved to say that the Sony ZV-E1 has not missed focus while I've been shooting these videos, and especially while I'm out and about. I would say 98% of the time, this camera is nailing focus. And you know what? I'm happy with 98%. Now, I know I've already touched on it, but the stabilization from the ZV-E1 is incredible. No one likes watching shaky footage, at least unintentional shaky footage. It can be used, stylized in some different ways, but usually we're after stable footage. And that's great because the dynamic active stabilization inside the ZV-E1 is on another level. I'm gonna pop up a few little tests on screen now so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. But it's crazy. Now, it does crop in on the sensor. So let's have a look at this 20mm shot right here, and then let's turn dynamic active stabilization on, and you'll see I lose a lot of that wideness. It's not crazy. I would say it turns my 20mm lens into maybe something similar of a 24 or 28mm, and I'm personally okay with that. I would much rather lose a little bit of that wideness for the vast majority of the shakes from my hands and steps to be taken out of the footage, and I think that's a worthwhile trade-off. Especially when you think about the alternative, which is usually gonna be a gimbal. If I don't have to take a gimbal in my backpack or carry it because it doesn't fit in my backpack, I'm turning dynamic active stabilization on every day of the week. Now, just quickly, if you're watching this video, chances are you are somewhat of a creator. And if that's the case, I have a very good feeling that the sponsor of today's video, Motion Array, might just be for you. Imagine this. A giant library of assets that has pretty much anything you would ever need to get your photo or video projects over the line. Let's think a massive library of great song choices for your next video. they've got it. Transitions, VFX, and motion graphics, they've got it. Stock footage to fill some of those gaps that you accidentally missed while you were out shooting, they've also got it. Maybe you're looking for high quality sound effects to bring your viewer even deeper into your video, they've got it. Stock photos, overlays, and what seems like everything else you could ever need to get any creative project over the line, guess what? They've got it. So if you're looking to take your content to the next level or just make this whole content creation journey easier, head down to the first link in the description where you can get $50 off Motion Array and begin using all of their incredible assets. Thank you, Motion Array, for sponsoring today's video and for the continued support over the years. It absolutely means the world. All right, back to today's video. Moving on to definitely a touchy subject with the Sony ZV-E1, we're talking about photo quality. 12 megapixels. Yikes. Well, that's what I thought when I was coming from my 45 megapixel Canon R5C. 12 megapixels? Are you kidding me? And then I shot photos with it. And then I got humbled. I can't lie, the photos coming from the ZV-E1 are great. You can push and pull the raw files all over the place. They look incredible. I actually have a full video, a little bit of a deep dive, if you will, about the 12 megapixel photos coming from this camera. So I'll put that on screen now, but I love the photos coming from this camera. Now, sure, you can't zoom in like crazy or crop in like crazy either. So you've somewhat got to nail your composition a little bit more in camera. But when you're posting to social media, especially Instagram, and you're going to get hit with that Instagram compression, 12 megapixels is more than enough. Believe me. I can promise you that 9 times out of 10, if you had a 40 megapixel photo and a 12 megapixel photo, and you couldn't zoom into either one, you would have to get extremely close to the screen, or you might not even be able to tell the difference between the two at all. And yeah, that kind of speaks volumes. I know 12 megapixels sound crazy, especially in this day and age where phones have got like 60 megapixel cameras in them, but 12 megapixels, more than enough, especially on the full frame sensor. My goodness, the photos just look super tasty. Now moving on to price, this camera isn't super cheap, I'll be honest, but it's not super expensive either. Depending on the deal you pick up and depending on what country you're in as well, you can pick these cameras up, the Sony ZV-E1, don't know why I said it like that. You can pick the Sony ZV-E1 up for about $1,900 US. Now convert that to whatever currency you're watching this video from, whatever country. You can't watch a video from a currency. All right, Zach, a few more things to work on. Now, while $1,900 might sound a little steep, if you are into this for the long run and you could see yourself using this camera for the next 4 years, give or take, which is something I possibly could see myself doing if my whole content structure didn't revolve around talking about different and new cameras, then this camera is going to break down and cost you about $500 a year, spread over 4 years. And then the cool part about that is, even though you're gonna have to sell it at a heavy discount, you might be able to get, I don't know, maybe $600, $800, $1,000 back when you sell it in 4 years' time, and then it's cost you even less. So if you're getting into social media and content creation fairly seriously, I would say the ZV-E1 is a worthwhile investment. Of course, that is without a lens. That price is without a lens. So you do have to factor that into things as well. But if you already have a handful of Sony lenses, or you've got a little bit more than $1,900 to spend, this is a great camera. However, with all of that said, and I feel like I could sing the praise of the ZV-E1 all day, there are a few things that I don't like. First of all, the grip is too small. I don't have giant hands, but from time to time, I'm not a huge fan of this grip. It feels a little bit tiny. One of the other things that annoys me to high hell is the little thing on the front around the shutter button. I don't know what Sony was thinking, and I don't know why they didn't just make this a dial or just not include it at all, but this is some kind of zoom function that I quickly turned off. I think they call it clear image zoom, not a fan of that whatsoever, or I believe if you're using one of the zoom lenses that you can zoom from the camera with, I don't know, some weird Sony lens that you can do that with, I believe you can use this as well. But for a vast majority of people that don't have these lenses, or maybe I'm just the weird one that doesn't have any of them, this is a useless thing, and all it does is put this big black text box on the screen every time I bump it and get in the way of me composing my shot. If you could turn that off, or maybe you can turn that off, please, someone in the comments, let me know. And last but not least, the lack of a viewfinder is a little disappointing. However, if you want such a feature-packed camera that is incredibly small, something's got to give, and I have learned to live without a viewfinder. My second camera, the Sony a7C Mark II, has a viewfinder, so that's where I get my viewfinder hit. Unfortunately, no viewfinder on the ZV-E1, but that is definitely not a deal breaker for me, and hopefully that's not a deal breaker for you. And if it is, then maybe the ZV-E1 isn't for you. So if you are looking to invest in your content creation game this year, or even just take your content to another level with a brand new camera, I would definitely recommend the Sony ZV-E1. Is it perfect? Absolutely not, but I would say right now it's probably the closest camera to perfection if you're after everything I've described. Small, feature-packed, lightweight, and absolute killer video with insane stabilization. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.